In 1916, the Piggly Wiggly was released upon the world. The result is that it changed the way that you and I get our food forever. Before the Piggly Wiggly, this is what your shopping trip would look like. You walk into the store, you hand your shopping list to the shop clerk, Reginald. Reginald reads it. He probably judges you a little bit. He tries to convince you to buy the latest miracle tonic for only $7.99. You politely decline, repeatedly, and eventually he goes into the back room to get you your groceries. If you're really unlucky, your neighbor walks in at exactly the same time and you make awkward small talk until he gets back. Excruciating. Then, a man named Clarence Saunders does something groundbreaking, something scandalous, something absolutely unheard of. He opens a store called the Piggly Wiggly, where customers walk along aisles of shelves, read prices and labels themselves, choose their own products, and then check out at the door. Scandalous. Clarence Saunders invented self-service grocery shopping. In the coming years, this new model spread like wildfire throughout America and then the globe. Suddenly, we had a level of control over the way we got our food in stores that we had never had before. Suddenly, we had choice and agency. We weren't at the mercy of Reginald to hand us our food whenever he felt like it. In hindsight, it's not a surprise that the Piggly Wiggly came when it did. 1916 is midway through the First World War, so the Reginalds are in short supply. It's also midway through the first wave of the feminist movement. Women are a few years away from the right to vote and are not impressed with random men telling them what groceries to buy. On the tech side, cash registers have recently hit the mainstream and the first self-contained refrigerator has just been invented. Electricity is starting to become widespread. There are these moments in history where societal and technological changes converge in a way that causes us, you and I, to fundamentally rethink our food system. These changes in the food system often feel like a side effect of much more widely noticed events. Sometimes we don't fully appreciate their significance because the way that we get food just feels like the way we've always gotten food. It's something that is so human and so deeply embedded in our daily lives that surely the way we do it is just the natural way of doing things. But there was a time where picking your own food off shelves felt crazy. Now it's crazy to think that we ever did anything else. The world is constantly changing, and our food system constantly responds. Each time we reach a turning point in our food system, there's a common trend. In 1900, we learn about germ theory and pasteurization in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, and we get food safety standards. In 1916, we invent cash registers and refrigerators in the middle of the First World War and the feminist movement, and we get self-serve grocery stores. In 2020, we mix e-commerce with a global pandemic, and we get online grocery shopping. We are now in another era of societal and technological change. You may remember COVID. COVID forced the UN, the EU, the American, and the Australian governments all to reevaluate our food supply chains. Each of these bodies produced major reports with policy implications concluding that we have a global problem. Right now, the majority of our food is grown in very small geographic areas and relies on extended food supply chains to get to us. This leaves us in a vulnerable state. After the supply chain disruptions of COVID, this was reinforced by the supply chain disruptions caused by the invasion of Ukraine. Our current food supply chains are not resilient enough to deal with external shocks. And we are now experiencing the effects of a changed climate where droughts, floods, wildfires, heat waves, and cyclones are all more likely and more intense. Now, you don't know this about me yet, but I am a lettuce girly. And in 2022, I find myself staring at an empty shelf where the lettuces should be. Due to heavy rains in the growing regions, we are currently experiencing shortages in supply. We are working closely with our growers to make sure supply returns to normal as quickly as possible. I read that sign 3 times and then reread it every time I came back until the lettuces did. Heavy flooding in key growing regions had washed away crops, damaged topsoil, and left fields waterlogged. Infrastructure damage and road closures made it hard to get any salvaged produce out to us. My lettuces. Now, it may not have been the end of the world for everybody that the lettuce and a few other vegetables went missing for a month or so. However, in 2023, heavy flooding cut off areas of Western Australia from any essential goods for weeks at a time. The local store in Kununurra? Bare aisles. Empty shelves. There's photos. The aptly named Fork in the Road report tells us that if more than one catastrophic event hits us at the same time, it will be enough to absolutely decimate our current food supply chains. In Australia, we live in one of the most food-secure countries in the world, and we are incredibly lucky not to have to go to the grocery store wondering whether they will have anything for us. But in the coming decades, we risk running out of food in major towns and cities because of supply chain failures. Bare aisles. Empty shelves. What we need is to shift to a food system that is more distributed and flexible. What we need is another Piggly Wiggly moment where we stop relying on somebody to bring us our food from the back room and are instead empowered to pick it ourselves. We definitely have the societal upheaval required. Luckily, we are also living in an era of tech change. AI, robotics, renewable power, autonomous vehicles, and indoor growing techniques have all been improving rapidly over the past 10 years. Each time this happens, each time societal and technological changes converge, each time we reach a turning point in our food system, there is a common trend. We always move towards a system that gives us more control. Food safety standards, a little more control over how we get our food. Self-serve grocery stores, a little more control over how we get our food. Online grocery shopping, a little more control over how we get our food. Because in the end, food is about certainty. It's about security. It's about knowing that you have the means to get through today, and you'll have the means to get through tomorrow, and the day after that, and the week after that. It's about knowing that we can get our food whenever and however we need it. If we think about our food system from first principles, 2 things matter. 1, simply that the food is grown, and 2, that it gets to us when we need it. Everything else can be redesigned around the societal and technological currents of our time. Which means now is the perfect time to look at our food system and really consider what it could be. After our Piggly Wiggly moment, here's what your shopping trip could look like. You pick up your phone, you check what fresh food is available, you order, and your list goes straight to your closest high-yield indoor greenhouse. Here, the air is warm and smells slightly sweet and earthy. It's carefully climate-controlled, perfectly humid, and contains just the right level of CO2 for optimum plant growth. LEDs illuminate walls of leafy green, hanging gently from conveyors which can move along tracks as needed. Families, your family, come to a visiting area to see their food being grown, and these conveyors will bring ripe plants for excited kids to pick. Well-respected farmers supervise the growing process. They know the kids by name, they know Grandad hates Brussels sprouts. They gladly share their knowledge. Today, your order wakes a bank of conveyors which rotate lettuces and cherry tomatoes towards a robotic arm. This arm harvests them and places them gently in a small autonomous delivery robot. If you can't tell, I love robots almost as much as I love lettuce. This robot drives straight to you, and you get your food the day that it was picked. Of course, this process is energy intensive, but it's run on renewables, so no emissions. The power required is balanced out somewhat because it doesn't require the high energy refrigeration and long distance transport of our current system. As many greenhouses as possible utilize waste heat from nearby facilities. Not everything can be grown in this way. Some things do have to be grown outdoors, whether that be closer or further away. But you can see, with your own eyes, that enough food is grown and protected that your supply won't be constantly disrupted by extreme wind and rain and sun. And if something goes wrong, you know exactly where to go, because the food system isn't one long, fragile chain anymore. Instead, it's a robust network, an ecosystem of growing centers in every neighborhood that can bend and flex to mitigate the hazards of our world. Suddenly, a global pandemic or war is slightly less scary because you're not reliant on food trickling down to you from so far away. If something happens to your growing center, you know where the next closest ones are and that they'll be able to help fill the gap. You're not reliant on an opaque system that many of us are losing trust in. You're empowered, not just in the control of your food, but in the creation of it. Everything we need to make this future a reality already exists. The technology is developing, and it's becoming more efficient and cost-effective. I've spent the last 3 years dedicating my time to the idea of this future through a startup called Owner. We're a group of students working with food organizations to build software to enable distributed food systems so that when this technology becomes cost-effective enough to use at a local scale, we will be ready. Each time we reach a turning point in our food system, there's a common trend. We always move towards a system that gives us more control. Because the level of trust that we have in the way we get our food cannot be disentangled from the pace of human progress. If somebody hadn't invented agriculture 10,000 years ago, there is no way that you or I would be sitting where we are today. And ever since then, since the first farmer planted the first seed, every step we take to make our food system better gives us the freedom to think bigger and be bolder. Because if you can guarantee that I and my family will have a stable source of food no matter what, suddenly my life completely unlocks. Suddenly I can live more creatively and do the things that really matter to me. You and I can take more risks to chase dreams in a way that we couldn't before. We can spend our time and energy on what's interesting and important rather than what's mundane and urgent. There's not a hushed undercurrent of anxiety and instability and whispering powerlessness. And this new creativity and long-term thinking unlocks new changes in our society and technology that allows us to improve our food system again. So the pattern continues. Societal change, technological change, moving us towards a food system that gives us more control and therefore gives us the freedom to think bigger and be bolder. Our Piggly Wiggly moment is being released upon the world.